All right. Well, here we are. Good to see everybody. We are streaming on multiple platforms today. We're not going to do the intro today, but this is Callings and Careers. I am so glad to be on with you all today. I know my co host is as well. She's always beaming with not just energy and excitement, but some humor, some quick wit, and some mic drop moments. And so we are committed to Christ centered career coaching conversations. Yeah. And so I'm Christopher Harris. This is my co-host, Jessica Canty. Jessica, what is up?
What is up? Life is lifing, but I'm excited to be in this space to talk about how to do life a little bit better. I'm Jessica Canty. I am your life and career strategist. I love helping melanin millennial women who want high achieving careers. So, all things
I love
career, I'm ready to jump in and have a conversation about. Uh-huh.
I love it. I always feel like, for some reason, Jessica, I always feel like I'm supposed to ask you, what is the season's decorations for now? Because that is your one of your gifts. Like, what's the decoration?
Oh, I'm chuckling because this year Lent, Ash Wednesday started on Valentine's Day, and so I have my Black History wreath on the front door, and I got all my Valentine's Day decorations all around the house. But right now, I have a Black History wreath and a countdown to Resurrection Sunday on my front door. So it almost feels like it's a blend of the two seasons. So I'm excited. Tomorrow, I'm gonna switch everything out to get ready for Resurrection season.
Yeah. Hey, Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
February didn't March, but April, May.
But that's a true dad joke right there. I'm going to have to tell my daughter that one. She was telling me some dad jokes yesterday. I'm swiping that one. That's going to
There
be on
you
our
go.
afternoon commute.
You can have it. You can have it.
Mm-hmm.
No, seriously, y'all. This is how we get down on careers and callings and careers. And our commitment, very seriously though, is to help you discover your calling and then developing your career. Our goal is particularly for people of faith, to think about how to live their full experience in the workplace, how to flourish in their faith in the workplace, how to navigate the workplace in a way that you can't be authentic to who you are, what you believe, and how you engage in the work that we do. And so we're excited to always bring what I believe is relevant conversations to this space to engage with you. And as Jessica mentioned, she does have a huge passion to help moms and women and navigating all kinds of space to be healthy, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, professionally, relationally, all of those things. As a matter of fact, if you're not following her, I would encourage you to do that today. Yesterday, she did a live on Instagram talking about how to navigate. I lost it. You said jokes and jabs, knowing the difference in toxic relationships with jokes and jabs. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I
Uh-huh.
remembered. I did
Uh-huh.
good.
Toxic relationships. Absolutely, you did.
Yeah. I'm Christopher Harris, of course, the founder, co-founder, and CEO for diversechurchjobs.com. And our commitment is to help connect churches, candidates with great environments so that they can flourish and thrive as well. So we are streaming this platform or streaming this conversation on LinkedIn. So to all of our folks that are on LinkedIn, welcome. We're streaming this live on YouTube. To all of you that are on YouTube, welcome. And we are streaming this today for the first time live on Instagram. So welcome to all of our IG folks. We're glad to have you. Today's conversation is centered around how to work with people who are different than you. Man, listen, like there's no way around it. There's no way around being able to engage and work with people who are just different than you. That's the reality of who we are. That's the reality of what we do. It's the reality of life. And so we want to talk with you today about what that looks like. And I do believe that collaboration is the currency of the kingdom of God. And while you may not work for a job that is operating, so to speak, in the kingdom of God, you and I are full-time representatives of that everywhere we go, including in our workspace. And so it's important for us to, I believe, represent Christ in every area of our lives, including in our work. So before we jump into it, we're going to give you some points and pointers and tips and conversations today. But Jessica, any immediate reaction to this conversation? Things that you've been saying, you're a counselor and you're helping coach people and all those things as well. So any immediate reaction?
I think it's a very poignant conversation to have in an election year, because there's so many polar opposites that are happening in our country when we turn on the news, when we turn on the radio. I also think it's a wonderful conversation to have because there's so many more generations that are in the workspace as well. So it's not just millennials and baby boomers anymore. Gen Zers are fully immersed into the workspace now. And so especially with the conversation that's been really been has been in the marketplace about diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you're not able to work in a diverse workspace, you're not able to work. So I do think this is a timely conversation to have, because everywhere you look, you've got to be able to work with other people that don't look like you.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. So, the first thing I think that is again, I just want to stress that it's really important for us as followers of Jesus Christ to see ourselves as full-time representatives, right? That is not something that we turn off. It is not something that we can, clock out from. We've got to be committed to representing this literally every single day of our lives, everywhere that we go. It's funny because actually this morning, Jessica, I was at an event, community event, that is connected to some economic development things in our city. And my pastor and I both sit on the board for this particular organization. The mayor was there and some other elected officials and that kind of thing. It's probably maybe about 250 people in the room. So I walk in and, it's like that networking kind of vibe. They've got like the, light breakfast, continental breakfast there. Everybody's kind of getting their coffee and tea and water. And so when I walk in, they're checking everybody in, right? And so the gentleman, his name is Tracy. He said, "Hey, Pastor Christopher, it's good to see you." I was like, "Hey, good to see you, Tracy. Always great." So he gets me checked in. Well, there's a lady standing next to him and she was like, "Oh my God, it's Christopher Harris." And I'm like, "Hey, how are you? I've never met you before. What's your name?" And she's like, "Oh, I used to work with your wife, but I follow y'all on Facebook, and like y'all's family, y'all need your own show." And I was like, "Oh, that's so funny, right?" I say that to say, like, you never know where you go, where people are watching. Like, you never know where you go, and there are people that are watching. And so I think, really important for us to just think about those things. So let's jump into it, Tracy. Let's jump into it, Jessica. And we're going to walk through these few points today. So first thing that we want to say to people is that I think it's important for us to build relationships with people who are actually not like you. I think it's easy to get into our ecosystem to just default and navigate to people that are like us. But I actually believe, and if we had time, I could break this down biblically, but I actually believe that when God wants to grow us, he puts us around people who are different than us. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I definitely first want to say it's incredibly important for us to build relationships with people who are not like us, because if we don't, that's a space for biases and blind spots to grow. And once you are operating in biases and blind spots, it's hard to navigate acquiring new skills, acquiring new opportunities. So over and over again, I teach classes on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things I tell people is, if you can look at your 5 major connections and they all look like you on some aspect, then already you're operating in a blind spot. So that means if you go outside and you think everyone that lives around you may be in the same socioeconomic status. If you go to church, everyone looks sort of like you, same skin complexion, same background. If you're in your neighborhood or at work, if everybody, it looks like one of your major identity markers, you're operating in a blind spot. And so a lot of times people struggle around that. And it's like, well, what do I do differently? It's look at your 5 major connections and do something different than that. So go grocery shopping in another neighborhood. Go visit another property in another socioeconomic status, because that really helps you to build those relationships with people that look like you, that don't look like you.
That's so good. That's so good. I think the principle of this about building a relationship with people who are not like you is really, it speaks to this notion of becoming curious about people, becoming curious about how people think, how people operate. And especially you mentioned earlier that we are definitely in a polarized culture. And oftentimes, as Christians or as people of faith, we get typecast and sort of put into a corner as people who are very judgmental and arrogant, and we don't know how to play well in the sandbox with other people. But I think when you have relationships with people who are different than you, and you can actually put a name and a face and a story behind that other, whatever that other is, right? So you have your thing, but then there's other people that have their thing. So whatever that other is, when you can put a name and a face and a story behind that, it actually creates connection to people in a way that causes us to be, empathetic and relational, and we prioritize the fact that there may be differences. Everybody may not be a believer in Jesus Christ, but everybody is made in the image of God. So how do we honor that imago Dei in other people in a way that at least just makes us curious to learn from them, increase our own self-awareness? Like, why do you believe what you believe? If that's what you believe, like if it's solid, right? You shouldn't be afraid of being around other people, and your faith shouldn't be that shaky that it can be snatched because you're in a room with somebody that's different than you.
That part. Absolutely. When the Bible talks about us to go, tells us and gives us a commandment to go ye therefore, to go to the places that are near, far, that are hard, wherever that looks like. And of course, when you're going places that are far away from where you are comfortable, it's gonna be somebody that doesn't look like the way you look. So you hit the nail on the head when you said that. It's an empathy building exercise, and it allows us to be able to step outside our own echo chambers, if you will, especially in the social media space. We could like and we could share on the things that we like. So it's easy for us to think that the whole world thinks like this, or every depiction we see of a particular type of group of people must be like that, when it's just in our own little world, on our own little feed. So it's incredibly important to go ye therefore. Social media, virtual spaces, and in real life.
Of course, you said so much more eloquently than I did. An empathy building exercise.
It is.
An empathy building exercise. I love that. That's good. So that's number one. So build relationships with people who are not like you. I think number two is this notion of how do we learn to assume the best about other people? I think so often we think that if somebody is different than us, that like, how do I want to say this? We demonize what's different, right? We demonize what's different. And just because a person is different doesn't mean that they're a demon.
That's a mic drop. That should be on a mug somewhere.
Yeah. Which part? The just because they're different doesn't mean they're a demon. Yeah.
That part.
Yeah. I think there's a way that we can create a culture, even in our own lives, of honor and respect, even in the difference.
Absolutely.
How do we do that? How do we get to the place where we assume the best about other people?
Well, one, in the Bible, Jesus talks about, how it's easy for us to see the speck in somebody else's eye, but forget the log in our own. So slow down and ask yourself, if you were in that person's shoes, how might you respond? And often when I talk to my clients, I always say, can you think of at least 3 hopeful or optimistic things that could be happening? And if not, you're in a spiral or you're in a negative thinking space. So if someone doesn't say hello to you in the morning, or they accidentally bump into you when you're at the copy machine, or, don't hold the elevator door for you, and the only thing you can assume is that person has an attitude, or they're mean, or they're stuck up, or that's a young person, an old person, whatever the ism you can put in that space, that you're operating in a space where you're assuming the worst about the person. So I always say, slow down and ask yourself 3 things, like, maybe they didn't hold the elevator for you because they didn't see you coming. Maybe they didn't realize that they did bump into you. If you're only assuming the negative, at least counteract it with at least 3 positive, hopeful things that might be taking place.
That's so good. The thing I'm thinking about as you were talking is, just as frustrated as we are with them, they are probably just as frustrated with us.
Absolutely. Yes, you can frustrate somebody. Oh, that's like a novel idea, that I can upset somebody, that I can irritate someone. No. Yes, even with the best of intentions, you can get on somebody's nerves. So be very careful how you treat people and how you perceive them.
not only can you get on somebody's nerves, but I think we have to come to the realization that sometimes different people's personalities don't always mesh well. And sometimes, like, I don't know if there's a solution to that, but there's just, sometimes there's just times. So one of my mentors, I'm gonna make this statement, I'm gonna let you unpack it because you got the counseling and all that stuff to help unpack this. But one of my mentors said one time that one of the best questions sometimes a leader can ask themselves is, what is it like on the other side of me?
Mhm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. A leader that is brave enough to ask that question, to have that open door policy, to be that inquisitive, is always going to be in touch with what their people need.
Yeah.
There's so many people who are leaving jobs because their employers are out of touch with the actual needs. They're creating
Mm,
all these policies and programs that don't actually fit what the people need. So if you can
wow.
slow down and say, what would it be like? That's why that show, what was it, Undercover Boss, was so popular, because
Yeah.
the people actually from the top who were sitting in the C-suite had to come down and see what it was like to be on that front line doing the work. And I mean, it was eye-opening for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, those of you that are on Instagram, if you want to ask a question, feel free to jump right in and ask a question in the chat. We're monitoring that. Those of you that are on LinkedIn or on YouTube, if you've got a comment or something along those lines, feel free to do that. And we will tag Jessica in this, so it'll be on both of our stream. As a matter of fact, let me tag Jessica in this now, and she'll be able to add this to her account as well, and we both will post this. So point number one is, and we're talking about how do you work with people who are different than you. So point number one is about learning to actually build relationship with people who are not like you. Point number two is about assuming the best in others. Here's a hard one, y'all. And that is this: you have to get to the place where you actually change your agenda to change them. And I think sometimes we think, well, I'm gonna set up a meeting with them and I'm gonna have a conversation with them. I'm gonna let them know, da 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 da. Or, we can even be passive, Jessica, and slide them a book.
Or nudge them in church. Did you hear what he said? You hear what he said? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
We can be shady. Lord, we can be shady. We'll send somebody a podcast episode or a clip or something, and we won't actually address the issue in a healthy way. We just throw in shade in all kinds of other ways, because in our minds, if they just listen to me, we're gonna get them changed. And I think there's a mistake there.
I think sometimes it's with the best of intentions that we go in with an agenda, because we want to make sure we cover everything. We want to make sure everything is addressed. But I'll raise my hand so nobody else does. This is me. I go in with the tunnel vision, and I'm like, this is just how it's going to go. I'm going to say this. They're going to say that. I'm going to say this, and this is how this is going to go. And so I really had to slow myself down and take a deep breath and say, let the Holy Spirit in. Slow down, and this is something that I really had to do before I would go into meetings. I would pray and ask the Holy Spirit to show me what I'm supposed to see, amplify what I'm supposed to hear, because I would go in and be so upset when we weren't going according to the agenda. If we were 20 minutes off, I would be distraught. I would be, distraught and disturbed. But when in reality, the agenda changing allowed for management to hear the voices of my colleagues, allowed for more ideas, innovation. And when you do slow down and make space for people's opinions and experiences on your own agenda, you're actually expanding your own skill set.
That's so good. That's so good. Think about this for a moment. This wasn't pre-planned to think about this. So Jesus has his disciples. That's a work environment, right? They got a startup that they're running that is on its way to becoming a global enterprise.
Never been done before.
At the beginning stages, Peter goes to Jesus and says to Jesus, you can't die. His agenda is to change Jesus, to tell Jesus what you're doing is not good. But if you think about it, that was actually Jesus's mission, to die. But Peter had in his mind what the right thing was, and he was completely out of order.
And only, I can only imagine, or I'm so happy that I don't have to imagine what would have happened if Peter's agenda was actually implemented.
Ooh, ooh. Oh,
So I'm so
all of
grateful,
us will be in trouble.
so grateful. Eternal trouble at that. Eternal trouble at that.
Listen, listen.
Yeah.
All right. So number one is build relationships with people who are not like you. Number two, we said assume the best about others. Number three, we said change your agenda to change other people. Here's number four. This is a little bit of a longer one, but I think it's so powerful. And that is that we got to get better at actually navigating disagreement and navigating conflict to the degree that we understand that disagreement, getting better at it, is actually a learned behavior. Learning how to
Mhm.
navigate disagreement, learning how to navigate conflict is a learned behavior. You talked about this a little bit on your own platform yesterday about people, sometimes people, they do toxic behaviors, but they got it from their
Mhm.
families or they got it from their friends growing
Mhm.
up. You addressed this a little bit yesterday. Talk some more about that. Unpack that some more.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking about how people often just dress up jabs as jokes, and
Mm,
it's a learned communication pattern that I've seen in my practice throughout the years. That people often see this in their families, whether it's sarcastic, whether it's a little bit of biting humor. It's
mm,
not something that everyone's going to laugh at. It's always something that's sort of a backhanded compliment or something that is like you can tell that the true intention wasn't to make you laugh. It was to point out something, was to be passive aggressive in nature. And so sometimes, even in those toxic communication patterns, there are some people who are not doing it intentionally, but they don't know another way, or they're afraid of conflict. So they're choosing the passive aggressive way to address a thing. So if
yeah,
you say something about it, it's like, oh no, I was just joking. Yeah, no, I was just joking. But it is that learned behavior that we have is to learn how to communicate better and know that if someone disagrees with you, that doesn't mean that it's a slight on your character. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person, that you weren't intelligent when you posed whatever it is that you were saying. It's saying here's another way to look at that. Here's another way to communicate that more effectively.
that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah.
How do you help a person get better at conflict and disagreements? How do we do that?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. First, you can't be afraid of them.
Hmm.
You have to present. You have to recognize that so many wonderful things have come out of conflict. So many wonderful things have come out of disagreement. Of course, we don't see that when you turn on reality TV. All you see is conflict and people, getting paid off of being dramatic and yelling and all the drama that comes with reality television. But
Yeah.
conflict doesn't necessarily mean a catastrophe. And I think a lot of people feel
Ooh.
that word. It's like it's synonymous with conflict and catastrophe. Or I have one client where she shared with me yesterday that, well, someone told her it was something that she forgot to do. And she went down in this whole mental spiral in a business meeting because she was like, well, I felt resentful because no one told me to do this. Da, 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 da. And I said, but now you know. Now you know how to effectively do your job. It wasn't written in an SOP somewhere. You're absolutely correct. But in this way, you have to be careful about how you communicate with yourself. Is the
Mm.
conflict really with me, or is it with what someone said?
Wow.
Do I feel like I'm being challenged? Or am I operate or I should say am I taking the invitation for growth and opportunity? So identifying those things and not being so afraid of the conflict, and knowing that it doesn't spell the end of the relationship. It just spells another different way to be able to work with each other more effectively.
That's so good. That is so
Yeah.
good. Because I think sometimes we assume that it has to be toxic, right?
Yeah.
Or assume that there's got to be drama around it. And it
Mhm.
just doesn't. There doesn't have to be drama around the dynamics that are at play. And I think it's really important for us to think about, what that looks like and how we navigate that. So that's so good. That's so
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
would
And when we
you?
release that, we could go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say when we release that fear that conflict means catastrophe, we can go through the whole change cycle. We can go, the forming, storming, norming that happens with teams and things of that nature. And we can release that anxiety and be open to hearing versus trying to mend our wounds because we think we're being attacked. When it
Mm.
really is, okay, I heard that idea. Let's see about how it goes this way. Or how does this, how can we implement it in that way? So anxiety is something that's really uncomfortable, and it also makes us question our career confidence. So when we can go into space saying, when someone challenges my idea, it's only making my ideas better. It's making me more polished, especially if it was done in a respectful way. Now, if it's a toxic work environment, that's something else. And I think we did a podcast episode about a toxic work environment. So definitely go check that one out. But definitely, this is an opportunity for you to grow.
Yeah. Would you put this conversation or this particular point, would you put this under hard skills or soft skills or both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's the hard skills of the language, how to convey a message, how to present the agenda, how to present the conflicting ideas. But I think it's a soft skill of knowing how to apply it, like knowing when to apply it. Knowing when it actually is a conflict, or knowing when somebody's saying the same thing you said, they just said it differently. So that's the soft skill. It's like, knowing when, how best to apply it.
I'm sure you've been in those meetings before where you see somebody, they're disagreeing with somebody, but they didn't even listen because they're saying the same thing. And you're like, what are you doing? We just spent 20 minutes on this and y'all are saying the same exact thing.
Listen, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of checking out when I start to hear those things. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait till y'all come to the resolution because y'all are saying the same thing back and forth, and I don't want to be a therapist in that space. But y'all are definitely saying the same thing.
Yeah, this is good. So for those of you that are joining in with us, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram right now live. And so glad to have all of you all that are hanging out with us. We are having a conversation about how to get along with people who are different than you, particularly in the workspace, and why that matters and why that's important. And so we're walking through a few points here that we think are just impactful for you, just some practical wisdom that you can apply to your life. This is, of course, Callings and Careers. My co-host there, Jessica Canty, and I jump on here a few times a month, helping to engage in these healthy conversations about what it looks like to discover your calling and then developing your career. So number one, we said that it's important for you to build a relationship with people who are actually not like you. Work on that and expand your capacity to relate to people who are different than you. We said assume the best about others. That's really important for you to not just assume that people are intentionally being different to be difficult, and that being different doesn't mean that they're a demon. We talked about that. We say that you need to change your agenda to change people, that in fact, sometimes it's actually very healthy for people to be who they are, how they're wired, their personality makeup, and all those things. We talked about how we all need to get better at navigating conflict and disagreement, that in fact, it's a learned behavior for us to get better at it. Here's the next point for today, and that is release the need to be right.
I don't know about that one, but I am right. I thought about it. I planned it. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know what you're going to say about that one because everybody is right.
I don't know what I'm going to say either.
I think that.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I think I've heard people say it over and over again when I'm working with clients, and they always say, I know this is not right. I know I'm wrong about this one. And I always tell them it's not about right and wrong. It's about healthy and unhealthy. Ooh. If you're the person who's always right in the room, that's a heavy burden. That you always got to be the one that's showing up, this perfection that always knows everything. And if you ever get to a space where you're the only one that's right, that means you're not learning. That means that you're like, again, go back to that first statement, you're operating in bias and blind spot. You probably seen that person in the workspace that's jaded, that thinks they know everything, or, that just walks around with that cloud over their shoulders and, has a certain level of expertise, but you wonder, why are they staying in the same position for 20 years? Because they were right. Mm-hmm. So they're going to stay right in their position. Why is it that this person has never been on another team, where they've been bounced around from team to team to team? Because they were right. It wasn't me. It was my boss. It was my coworker. It was the client. Oh, because you were right. But yet everybody else realizes they know they have to adjust how they're working with you. So I said it lightheartedly because, I think sometimes we have the best of intentions to be right, especially for recovering people pleasers, recovering people who are perfectionists. Sometimes it's hard for us to see that, oh, wait, there was something I missed. No, I can't. Yeah. There's not a space for error, but that's a heavy burden. So lay that at the foot of the cross. You don't always have to be right. look for the healthy, look for the wellness signs, look for the peace sign versus the checking that box off that I was Mrs. Right.
Yeah. As you
Mhm.
were talking, one of the things that I think one of the things that this point reveals is it reveals the point about motive, because
Oh,
like if your motive if your motive for the team, for the project, for the initiative, for the meeting is for the team to get better, for the organization to get better, for the customer to be served, whatever that is, you won't take someone disagreeing with your idea or project or initiative personal, because your goal is ultimately to get to the right destination. And
mhm.
sometimes getting to the right destination is actually taking ideas from around the table and then putting them together in a way that makes sense for everybody. If there's a way
Absolutely.
to create synergy,
Mhm.
and I think it's important for us to really evaluate, not only what we do but why we do it. And when we are able to do that, then you can really get to a place in terms of emotional health that you don't have to hold everything so closely and so tightly that if I'm in a meeting and Jessica says, well, Christopher, I know you've been working on this project for like maybe 3 months or 4 months, and you're still in the embryo stages or developmental stages. Have you considered this? Well, first of all, if I'm emotionally healthy enough, I should be able to receive that in the first place. Secondly, if I'm not in my feelings and actually am hoping that this thing works and it benefits everybody, then I should welcome that feedback in a way that helps all of us get better, including me if I'm the one that's even working on the project. So, I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, part of this is a motive conversation as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But that takes a great deal of emotional intelligence to say, is it my motive? You know,
Mm,
is it my emotions? What am I making a decision out of? And so that takes a great deal of emotional intelligence to do that. And we talked about emotional intelligence here as well. So I definitely encourage you to check out that episode where we talked about it because it's a consistent thing. You don't just, hopefully, you don't skip a day showering or skip a day brushing your teeth. It's a consistent thing. It's a consistent renewal, right? And so that's the same thing too. Like, is there a space of that I'm operating in that I have a system, but I'm so regimented and rigid in my thinking that that's the only way to do it. That's the right way to do it. Quick story: the way I fold my towels. It's the right way to fold the towels because it's easy to come out of the linen closet. It hangs up nicely, and I had a family member say, all it's going to do is wind up on your body in the
yeah.
laundry basket and back in the washing machine. So there is no right way to do a thing. So I'm all for structure. I'm all for systems. I got my planner sitting right next to me, but don't allow that rigidity to make you feel like that's the only right way to do a thing.
Yeah. Y'all, that's
Mhm.
that collective sometimes shade that I was telling y'all earlier that Jessica can throw. Like, she slides it right in and she does it with a smile, and you don't even realize that you just been hit right upside the head. It's like, I hope you shower every day.
I'm going to encourage that. I'm going to encourage you to do that.
That is
Mhm.
hilarious. That's
Mhm.
hilarious. All right. So
Ah,
our time is getting away from us. So the next point here, what we're talking about is how to get along with people who are different than you. And I think this is really, we're gonna have to spend some time unpacking this one, Jessica. I know our time is getting away from us, but this one I think is critical. I think it's, man,
mhm.
there's so much that can be said about this. And that is, and it ties really, I think, in some ways to the first point about building, intentional relationships with people who are not like you. But I think we've got to learn to get better at asking questions rather than making statements, especially definitive statements. And I think particularly a lot of times people have very strong opinions, but limited experience. And you can't have
Mm.
strong opinions when you've got limited experience and you don't even know in full totality like what this means or who this person is, or whatever that looks like. I'll stop there because I feel like I could run off with that. But go ahead.
And I mean, but to your point about having those strong apparent opinions and limited experiences, a lot of times those strong opinions are merely defense mechanisms and easier
Mm,
ways to maneuver in the world. So if I have a strong opinion about how women are, or how
mm,
about African Americans are, or Caucasians in the workspace. It helps me to prepare for whatever defense that I think that I'm going to have to put up when I interact with them. So,
Wow.
or if it's a situation where people who are younger than me, I'm working with them, people who are older than me, let me go ahead and defend myself. And I'm going to use this opinion that I have no clue who this person is, but this opinion is going to guide how I interact with that person. And so, one of the things that's incredibly important to ask is, how do I know what I know? Like, where did I get that from? And what do I need to know more about? And if you have those two umbrella questions, that's going to guide even how you talk to the person. Do you even know what their family structure is like? Do you know what makes them smile? Do you know what rubs them the wrong way? How do I know what I know? And what do I need to know? Even on, onboarding on a new job. I know one of the things that I asked one of my bosses was, what's one of your pet peeves? So when she said things not being on time, I was like, got you. It's always gonna be on time when it comes to you, or I'm gonna let you know when it's not gonna be on time. So I could easily say she has a chip on her shoulder. She doesn't like me. But if I didn't open that question up, I wouldn't have known. It was just because I was late and I didn't give her a heads up. Simple fix, simple thing. But if we are operating in those opinions instead of the experiences, it's really easy to operate in ignorance, made up stories, all of that good stuff.
Yeah. The enemy to this, asking more questions instead of making more statements, the enemy to this is speed. I think asking more questions says I'm willing to slow down to get a better understanding. I'm willing to slow down because I value the person more than my opinion in that sense, or more than trying to prove myself to be right, or talking just to hear myself talk, that I'm willing to slow down so that we can all win, all get to the right place, all grow better, and that I know who I'm actually working with. I mean, I think that question you ask about, what's your pet peeve, man, that's such a powerful question. And it is such a, how do I want to say this? What's the word I want to use? It's such a selfless question, right? Because what this says is that I know who I am, but I want to know who you are so that I can make adjustments if necessary, not to lose my identity, but I can adjust so that I don't do things unintentionally to offend you. But then because we don't have enough relationship, we're not even at a place where we can have those kind of courageous conversations. So then you just walk away offended. I walk away totally blind to the fact that I just offended you, or I've been offending you repeatedly. And then this cycle just kind of repeats over and over and over again.
Absolutely. So let's break that cycle this time.
Yeah.
Ask a question.
Yeah. I think when you ask better questions, you get better answers. So if we learn to ask better questions about people, I'm curious, Jessica, very consistently in meetings, you make this face. What does that mean? Tell me about that. For you, Jessica, tell me what that means, right? Or, like in real time, I'll say this, right? Like, I remember when we first started recording, I can't believe it's been 2 years, but when we first started recording with Callings to Careers, you would have this mannerism, like when you ask a question, or when I ask a question or make a statement, you have this mannerism where you don't always restate the question, but the way you answer it. And I was like, I wonder why she does that. And so offline, I asked you that question. He was like, I think it's because I used to be in pageants. I was in pageants, and it's the way they taught us in pageants. So now that I know that, it makes complete sense because of how you answer. Had I not known that, I'd be like, why does she keep doing that?
But I'm so glad you said that, because, sometimes we assume people are aware of their patterns of behavior, and they may not be. So when even the making the face or the answering the question, so even me saying I think it's because it's something that I wasn't necessarily conscious of or aware of. I had a good friend of mine when we were getting to know each other. He said, you pause and I was sometimes I try to figure out what the pause is, and I was like, oh really? And then I stayed quiet when he said it, and he's like that, and I just bust out laughing. I was like, I didn't even realize that was something that I did. But and again, I think that goes back to the earlier statement, is like assuming the best rather than assuming the worst, remaining that curious piece, because that can deepen the relationship.
Yeah. But to me, like on a platform like this, where we're having, these are not fluffy conversations. These are real transformative conversations. I appreciate the pause because to me that says that I'm pausing long enough to reflect on giving my words an agenda before I'm just flippantly saying something that has no depth to it.
Mm, that's a mic drop too. Give your words an agenda. I love it. I absolutely love that
Yeah,
statement. Yeah, yeah.
I do it, but I think that's maybe that's another point for another conversation. But I think we all are challenged because we are all held accountable, whether you're a believer or not, whether you're a follower of Christ or not. We all are held accountable for the words that we speak. We have to live with the result and the fruit from the words that we speak. And so I think it's really important for us to slow down. There's a reason why. And we may have a diverse audience on here, but according to scripture, those of us that are on here that believe in scripture, there's a reason why it says be quick to listen and slow to speak. Because I think when your words don't have an agenda, you end up regretting what you're saying and or the tone by which you said it, or all those things. And I think all of us can raise our hands because at some point we've said something that we probably, if we had slowed down, we probably wouldn't have said it.
Mm-hmm. 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 That foot in mouth moment. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, we're trucking along here. We've got, I think, what, like 2 or 3 more points here, maybe two more points. So we're talking about, for those of you that have joined in with us, we're talking about how do you get along with people who are different than you. And so we've given like 4 or 5 points already. You can go back, you'll be able to listen to the replay of this. But I think the next point is also powerful. But I also think that this might be hard work that we probably have to acknowledge, and that is that we've got to learn to build common ground.
Mm-hmm.
How?
Mm-hmm.
How, Jessica? How
Mm-hmm.
do we build common ground?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this is a good one that builds on our previous conversation about it not being a right and wrong situation. Some people are so afraid of compromise because they think that means they have to be submissive to somebody else's will. And
Mm,
so, common ground looks like we could all be represented in this decision. We can
mhm.
all work through some discomfort in this decision. Nobody's walking away being victorious. The whole team is walking away being victorious. But if you're in
Wow.
a battle type of mindset where it didn't go the way I wanted it to, common ground can't be achieved. So compromise doesn't necessarily mean that you are bending your will and you are being submissive to the point where you're being walked on. It means, okay, in this space, that particular idea took precedence. My gifts and skills are going to be able to carry that out. I'm learning that about myself, meaning that's something new that I can learn about myself. And in other spaces, my ideas may take the priority over whatever challenge that we're facing. But the common ground is knowing that compromise is not a scary thing.
Mm, mm. Compromise is not a scary thing. But Jessica, what if they haven't invested as much as I've invested? Should I be compromising?
Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I mean, here's the thing, especially in a multi-generational workforce. This is what happens with older generations.
Mm,
And I'll even speak for millennials because that's what I am one. It's easy for you to feel like, well, I've been in my career longer. I'm still paying on my student loans when this child was in elementary school. It's really easy to have those thoughts. And here's this little whippersnapper that's doing TikToks in the office, gonna come and tell me do da, 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 whatever. But they can bring ingenuity. They could bring
yeah,
a perspective that you haven't seen before. So yeah, there's people who are, working in the career field that I'm working in that, just got out of grad school. That doesn't mean I can't learn something from them.
that's so good.
Mhm.
All right, we might get in trouble with this one, but let's break this down for a second about building common ground. Because I wonder if we have, in some cases, the expectation that our coworkers are supposed to, that I wonder if we have the expectation that our coworkers must also be our friends.
They can be friendly. They can be
Yeah.
friendly. I follow a lady on social media and she cracks me up and she says, "Do your job and go home." It's nice to be friendly with people.
Yeah.
And in some careers, hear me clearly, I know that some careers are all about networking if you want to excel in that particular career. But even in
Yeah.
those spaces, those people may not be your friends. They may be allies, they may be connects, they may be resources, but they're not your friends. But
Yeah.
always lead with friendly. You can be
Yeah.
friendly.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So maybe part of the disconnect that people have at work with various environments that they're called to and all of those things is that in fact they've got the wrong expectations about, if I'm working with you, that we're also got to be bosom buddies and best friends and we need to be able to hang out together and all that. When in fact the really the context of the relationship is that we're assigned to work together. So as long as I figure out how to work with you, that doesn't necessarily mean that we've got to hang out every weekend or at nights and do slumber parties at each other's houses.
Yeah. I mean, there is, because you spend so much time with them, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You do hope that you can have some form of camaraderie with the people
Yeah,
that you're working with, right?
yeah,
And I mean, there are some spaces where you're intentionally left out. So I want to make clear that there are some spaces where you're being intentionally left out, where there's clicks in the workspace, where it's us four and no more. I get that. But that's
yeah.
even more of a reason for you to determine what workspace is going to make you thrive. So yeah, I
Mm.
mean, no, nobody wants to sit next to somebody that's a sourpuss, you know. So you may share a smile or a laugh. How was your weekend? But don't expect that everyone is going to be your friend.
Right.
Mhm.
And carrying with that assumption that people are going to automatically be willing to share personal matters and things like that, assuming like, I had to help this person. We were helping them navigate a new job that they were on in ministry, and
Mhm.
one of the things that they said was, I followed everybody on Facebook and nobody followed me back. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay for them not
Mhm.
to follow you back. I
Mhm.
said,
Mhm.
you also may have to, consider half of the people that you followed on Facebook, they may not even be on there on a regular basis.
That part. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're bringing all of these preconceived notions and expectations into a space that sometimes we may be setting ourselves up to be offended because we are assuming that there's no longer certain barriers or no longer certain disconnects in terms of relationship. When in fact, it's healthy for us to simply see a person as our coworker, co-laborer, whatever term we want to use,
Mhm.
department, co-lead or team member, rather than assume that just because we work together we're also going to be socially engaged together.
Absolutely.
And I think that's just dangerous territory. So
Mhm.
before we get the last one, let's recap really fast. Here are the ways that we're just offering some recommendations of how you get along with people who are different than you. While we get ready to go through these, I want to say, if you are on Instagram and you got a question, feel free to put your question in the chat. We're monitoring that. If you are on LinkedIn or YouTube, put your comments in the chat, and we're monitoring there as well. So points that we gave you today about how to get along with people who are different than you. So first of all, build more relationships with people who are actually not like you. Build relationships with people who are not like you. Number two, we said assume the best about others. Learn to assume the best about others. Number three, we talked about change your agenda to change them. Your assignment is not to make them a better person, not to change them. Your assignment is simply to work with them and to get along with them. The Bible says, as much as possible with you, live at peace with all men. So that's really important. Next, we talked about how it's important for us to learn, and pun intended here, learn how to deal with disagreements and conflict in a way that is honorable to to where you are, but also honorable to the other person. I think that's really important and really critical. We talked about the need to release our need to be right. No need to unpack that one. That is what it is. It is what it is. We talked about asking more questions and you make statements. We just finished talking about building common ground. Here's the last one for today, y'all. The last one for today, and that is this: over communicate.
Mhm.
Over communicate. Especially in places and spaces where you've got larger teams that are serving. It's really important for you to really think about, man, how do I make sure that what we're dealing with, I'm communicating that in the right way, and then I'm also
Mhm.
not making assumptions about what people understand, what they either do understand or don't understand. So let's talk about that, Jessica. Let's talk about this whole over communicating perspective.
Absolutely. And I mean, and when you say over communicate, definitely from the management perspective, when you're presenting a new initiative in the workspace, don't assume everyone understands why we're doing this. So definitely
Mm.
over communicate. But even on the level of people who are in cubicle country, when you are slowing down and you're sending an email, over communicate. And this is something I often do is I'll start the email with what I want to tell the person, but slow down and say good morning. I hope that your weekend was good. Like give some type of greetings and some type of salutations. Don't assume people are going to look at the email or text message or whatever our form of communication and fill in the blanks with what's in your thought bubble. So I have to slow down, and I mean it's something that I often teach my now 13-year-old. Slow down. Don't assume the teacher knows what you're saying. So fill in those blanks, fill in those details. You're not going to seem redundant. You can still be concise and to the point, but make sure that you're conveying everything that you would want to know when you pick up an owner's manual. You don't want anybody to leave out any instructions, right? When you purchase a product, you'd be pretty upset. I've seen the reviews on Amazon when people say the instructions were not good at all, right? So you want to make sure that you're communicating what the person needs to know, what the person may have, like those frequently asked questions. And you're the heart of what you're trying to share with the person too.
Yeah. And I think method of delivery in the communication and what you intend to communicate is just as important as over communicating. And I think if it's of something that is of value, it is a cross-sectional issue, meaning that this is not an issue that you're having because you're in your feelings. I'm saying this is a real significant matter that affects the culture, the ethos, the momentum, our work, the culture, the environment of the organization. I really think it's important, this idea of over communicating. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How do we do it? And how do we do it in a way that honors God and that just makes sense? So, man, this has been a good conversation today.
It has been. It has been. Yeah.
What else would you add, Jessica? What else would you think about underneath any of these points, or even some bonus responses here, about to get along with people that are different than you?
You don't have to listen to anything that we've said today. But I would tell you it's going to be a missed opportunity. If you are somebody who wants to get a promotion, who wants to get a raise, who wants to be on a different team, a different project, it would behoove you to do and sit down and hit the replay, share with a friend, share with your mentor. Hey, how am I not doing this? Can you see some spaces where I need to improve based on what we talked about today? Because each of these points could have been a lesson in and of itself. And you may need some more practical tips, which we've given you today, to walk that out. So I would say it would be it would be negligent in our duties to say to not to, I should say it would be negligent in my duties to not tell you to slow down, talk to your mentor about what's happened, hit the replay, get an accountability partner, because this was a really heavy session in terms of all the things that we covered. And in order to get the game plan, you have to go back and listen to it again and get help.
Yeah. Put that sucker on replay and take some more notes.
Absolutely. I highly encourage you to do that.
Yeah, this is good. Jessica, is there anything else on your mind that's been stewing? Anything else you've been thinking about deeply, reflecting on deeply, that you just want to share with anybody before we jump off today?
You can do it. You can do it. You can be amazing in your career. You can serve the Lord impeccably, and you can leave a legacy. So get to it. You can do it.
I love it. So listen, y'all, next month, in the month of March, we're actually going to be talking about making money moves in March. So we're going to talk about salary and salary negotiation. We're going to talk about retirement and how to navigate retirement. The phrase that we're using is retirement is real. It's coming. It's a reality for us. And so, again, this is Callings and Careers. We're very, very honored that you all took time to be here with us today. And we're definitely... We're believing that this information is not only very practical, but would be transformative for you as you implement it into your day-to-day lives. So let me just let Jessica tell you all how to find her, how to get a hold of her. Those of you that are looking to level up in your career, or even need a coach in some ways, or a counselor, therapist in some ways. Jessica, come on, tell everybody how to find her.
Well, anywhere you can find a person, you can find me at Jessica Canty. So you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on TikTok, you can find me at jessicacanty.com. You can even find me via email, jessicacanty@jessicacanty.com. Easy to remember. I want to keep the conversation going. So definitely look on all those different platforms so we can have a chat.
Love it. And you can find me specifically in this context at diversechurchjobs.com. again, where we're helping candidates and churches. We're doing consulting and even career development kinds of things like this to help folks get better in their careers and be at the right place at the right time. Personally, you can connect with me at ChristopherJHarris.com. All of my social media is linked there. And yes, I am on Pinterest. You can find me on Pinterest. I'm creating boards and all that kind of stuff on Pinterest. I always joke about that. I don't even know if that joke is relevant anymore. Are people still on Pinterest? Are people still hanging
I
on
am.
Pinterest?
That's why I laughed. So it might be our generational thing too. I don't know if Gen Z is on there or the new generation is Gen Alpha, I guess, but yeah, I'm definitely on Pinterest.
Yeah. I think people are still on there. They're creating boards for clothes and, posters and all kinds of other stuff. So it's all good. Jessica, thank you again for an incredible day today, incredible conversation. And to those of you that are listening in today, again, we're honored that you tuned in to be a part of today's experience and to be part of today's conversation. Again, I'm Christopher Harris. That is Jessica Canty. And we're here multiple times a month, a discussion on how to discover your calling, how to level up and develop in your career. Again, our commitment is that you would learn to flourish in your faith in the workplace, that you would learn how to flourish in your faith in the workplace. So we're excited about that. And we look forward to seeing you all the next time. Peace.